Our guest joining us for Just Talking is Brock Pierce, Bitcoin billionaire and former presidential candidate of the United States, and Eddie Scarry, a nationally recognized journalist for the Washington Examiner and author of Grow Up and Vote for Trump, Why 2020 is Your Last Chance to Become an Adult. Where do we go from here? Trump's out, Biden's in, big tech rules, and free speech is out. We'll be going into lightning rounds of questioning, so let's get into the inauguration. And Brock, I wanted, during your first appearance on the Chris Collins show, you stated 50% of the population on this planet is under the age of 35. The youth of this country are the sleeping giants, and when they decide to wake up, we're going to get that. And how can millennials, including Gen Z, hold this administration accountable?
Well, it starts with getting involved, realizing as much as we feel like our speech is being censored, which it is, and the First Amendment isn't the third or fifth, it's the first for a reason. Our freedom, the fact.
Oh, starting to break up a little.
And so we have to be involved. The future is going to happen to you, or it's going to happen with you. And it starts by having this conversation and realizing that your voice does matter, that your vote does matter, and to know what you stand for. So often people are voting out of fear. They're voting against something rather than for something. Act according to your conscience. Vote for what you believe in, because we're going to stay in this perpetual cycle, this downward spiral, until we start voting for what we want.
I feel you, Brock. And let me throw this at Eddie because, the presidential election didn't go the way you expected, as 2020 became the year that we didn't become adults. So doesn't it speak volumes when Bernie Sanders becomes the meme of the inauguration day, even when the likes of, let's say, Lady Gaga, Garth Brooks, Jenny from the Block all took the same global stage? And, oh yeah, let's forget President Joe Biden. So what's your thoughts on this?
Well, I can't say it didn't go the way I expected, because I didn't know what to expect. I was very honest about that the entire time. I didn't know who was going to win. Anytime anyone asked me, my guess was as good as anybody else's. But I think just on what Brock said, I actually don't have a problem with people voting out of fear. That was part of the theme of my book, Grow Up and Vote for Trump, which is that there are things to be afraid of, and there are things you should not want to happen to this country. You should be afraid of, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit later in your program, you should be afraid of the phrase racial equity. The word equity that keeps coming up, that's not what people think it is, I don't think. It doesn't mean the same thing as equality, but no, there are things to be afraid of. The election didn't go the way I wanted it to go, for sure. But I mean, that happens. There's always one around the corner.
Yeah, and I mean, I want to ask you this, Brock. I mean, how do you feel with the civility in this country? Because I know one of the biggest things that President Joe Biden said during his speech was he wanted to end this uncivil war. How do you think the progress of how Joe Biden's handling this situation currently?
I mean, I think, as you pointed out again, the fact that Bernie Sanders is the meme is suggesting that the people are still not satisfied. There's still great discontent in this country. And not to jump right into this, but what's happening at GameStop is really probably the thing that you want to be paying close attention to. It is the rise of Occupy Wall Street all over again. It's the 99% versus the 1%, some very specific hedge funds. And the people are likely going to win in this instance. And once the people realize how much power they have, they will become more emboldened. And just a short summary, these hedge funds shorted 140% of the stock. 140%, meaning they borrowed and sold more than 100% of the stock. This defies the laws of physics. Someone with publicly available information was able to figure this out, and in Reddit sub-chat boards basically said, hey, if we all gang up, we can drive the price up. And if we do that, we can force a short squeeze, and the losses are infinite. They may bankrupt, these hedge funds. And then Robinhood, who, as an app, clearly, I mean, I have to imagine their first investor.
That's so true. And I know
we are going to talk about the hedge funds too. We are definitely going to get into this, Brock.
Absolutely. But I know I got such crunch time with you guys, and that's why we just want to move it forward, because there's so much I want to discuss with you guys. And Brock, I'm going to throw this one at you first, because Silicon Valley censorship has radically escalated over the past several months. banning pre-election reporting by the New York Post about the Biden family, denouncing and deleting multiple posts from the former US President Donald Trump, and then terminating his access altogether. And now Twitter is implementing a crowdsourced censorship form called Birdwatch to combat misinformation online, hoping to build a community to help moderate and label tweets. Is this model worth trying on social media platforms?
I mean, I have a huge problem is, again, free speech. The First Amendment is the foundation of our freedom. And I think the big tech companies overplayed their hand. They got so caught up in the anti-Trump movement that they flexed their muscles in a way that has alienated over 100 million Americans. They had monopolies. There was no way that anyone was going to be able to challenge these businesses. But because of these egregious actions, there are now 100 million plus Americans ready to migrate to new platforms. I think this will ultimately be the demise of their monopolies. They overplayed their hand, and now we see.
It's true. I know I want to move. I am like, I mean, I was already done with Facebook. I left Insta, just like the pictures. But I mean, the whole nine, Twitter, I'm kind of like, they're following all the censorship too. I'm over it.
It's true. I know Eddie said last time, he's like, I'm completely off Facebook. I'm still with IG, but I've been contemplating it recently. But I wanted to ask you this because isn't Twitter already filled with enough bird watchers? I mean, to me, doesn't a group of unverified fact checkers raise concern about a potential use of war in online information?
Right. I think it's kind of whenever Twitter and anyone else, Facebook, started this whole policing content with a select group who you have no idea who they are somewhere. You don't know where they live. You don't know who exactly it is. Policing content, putting labels on things. It was very antithetical to what their product and what they were providing was. It was supposed to be about direct communication between people, and you have a discussion, and that was kind of enough because people could watch that play out in real time. Now you have just this unknown, this shadowy group that's placing labels on things and in ways that really make no sense. The biggest question I ever had, and it goes back to when the Hunter Biden story on both Twitter and Facebook was censored, is when it's a breaking story, when it's an exclusive story, how do you fact check that? And what makes you more qualified than anyone else to say, this isn't real, or we can't verify this yet? Well, that's not really a fact check because this is new information. If it's new information, there's nothing to really put it up against. So, excuse me.
Well, I could tell you this, Eddie, because I was watching a PBS special. It was called We the Young People. And I just found out that 16-year-olds can become fact checkers. So while you are a nationally recognized journalist, thank the Lord, I guess we have the Gen Z to fix this whole situation.
Right. A 16-year-old telling me that my facts should be checked, okay? I'm like, honey, go pay some rent.
Hey, look it up. I mean, it's on YouTube right now. PBS, We the Young People. But Brock, I want to throw this at you because where do we go with freedom of speech in America when Parler gets shut down?
Again, this is just shocking that this has happened. And yeah, for those that don't know, all of a sudden, First Amendment, free speech being censored all over the place to the point that they've censored the sitting president of the United States of America, which means no one is safe. So a bunch of people start flocking to another application, Parler, that's supposed to be a censorship-resistant social network. And what do? Google and Apple, and I had a lot of respect for Apple, removed them from the App Store. And then Amazon shuts down their hosting. This is very, very alarming. Now, I've got some good news. There's this thing called blockchain technology, where we've been building censorship-resistant infrastructure for financial services, for social networking, for messaging, etc. And it couldn't come at a better time. And so I would expect to see an emergence of new applications that are censorship-resistant coming out this year.
And just like Brock said real quick, I think.
All right, go ahead.
I think just real quick, I think that Brock is right about this ending the monopolies. I mean, how you get a Fox News, which is the bane of the rest of the media's existence, how you get a Donald Trump is enough people in this country decide, you know what, they're not listening to me, or they don't like me very much, so we're going to do things a little bit differently. And I think what Brock is saying, that's going to break up the monopolies. It turned out you don't need the government to do this. We're going to do this on our own.
Snap, dude. Oh.
Absolutely. And I know you guys were really excited. I know Brock in particular was already jumping on this. So let's get right on into the Stonk Exchange. I still don't even know what the hell stonk even means. The memes. But now the thrifty nature of unemployed, quarantined millennials is attracting the attention of Wall Street when a group of Reddit users decided to play the market, put down their avocados, and push up the stock value for GameStop and AMC. So, Brock, I've been hearing Wall Street is crying bloody murder. Don't you understand? This is market manipulation. That's what they're telling us, right? I mean, what's your thoughts?
Sure. Something they've been doing for a very long time, constantly exploiting us for their personal gains. And so this is one of those incredible underdog stories, David versus Goliath. And right now, the people are winning, and we're getting lots of information is being exposed here. Robinhood clearly is about robbing from the poor and giving to the rich.
Yeah.
They've clearly always been working for the sheriff of Nottingham. And I think their original business pitch must have been, hey, we're going to help you fleece the sheeple. And so that's what we're seeing. And it's all coming out in such a big way that you're not going to be able to suppress this. And I think it will embolden the people. I'm just blown away, so fascinated by what we're seeing here. And if the people hold the hand, there's no way to get out of that short position as long as they hold. It's like the movie 300 or Braveheart, you know, when the army is charging and you hold and then the spears all come up. It's hold the line.
South Korea, I'm seeing tweets from like South Korea. We are holding the line. We're holding line around the world. Millennials holding the line. I'm like, yes, it is 300. I love it.
But I mean, I saw one on the Kramer show. Someone was already screaming, this is Russian collusion. I guess everything millennials do is a collusion, I guess. But Eddie, I want to throw this at you because as of this week, GameStop shares are up 1,700% since the beginning of the month, with Reddit users profiting and hedge fund companies such as Melvin betting on stocks to go down lost money. So what do you call a bunch of greedy Wall Street bankers who gambled away our entire economy in 2008 with zero consequences? Do you believe that we need more regulations on Wall Street?
I don't know about regulations, and honestly, on this subject, I think it's for people who are much richer than me, like Brock. But I think that otherwise, the dynamic is the same as we have been seeing over the last 4 years. It's people who believe they're agreeing to the rules, they're agreeing to the terms that have been laid out. They think they're playing by the rules, and then suddenly they figure something out that where they get the edge. Well, nope, we got to shut that down now. That's over, and that really angers a lot of people for obviously the right reasons. And yes, you're going to see people waking up to this, and hopefully a lot of change coming, whether it's through regulation or they just simply say, we're going to do our own thing, we're going to create our own thing, we're going to create something better. And I hope that is the way it works out.
I agree, man. I think it's so insane. But now let's get on to other stuff. Student loans. As someone who literally graduated during the pandemic, I want to know what this administration will do for the student loan crisis, as so many Americans like me aren't financially free. And Eddie, during the campaign trail, Joe Biden called for canceling $10,000 per borrower, and former Education Secretary Betsy DeVos was staunchly against Democrats' debt cancellation proposals, going as far as saying, quote, it's truly an insidious notion of government gift giving, end quote. So are you in favor of forgiving federal student loan debt?
I'm not in favor of it. I mean, and one of the points she has made is that there are people who have paid off their student debt. There are people like me who I haven't paid it off, but I've paid a lot of it. And for someone to come along and say, well, we're just going to cancel out everyone, and some people who have taken out thousands and thousands of dollars more than me are suddenly scot-free of any responsibility on this. I don't like that idea, but I think that an unintended consequence of this, and I've heard this in real life from someone I know, is they're telling their children, don't worry about paying your loans. Don't make payments. Just keep putting them off. And it's because they believe that someday someone in the government, whoever the president is going to basically forgive all their loans. That's not a good thing, I think, for this company. I think it is the education department that's the largest loan giver there is. There's more debt there than anywhere else in our economy. So I think we're looking at a very scary situation. probably coming up.
Would you be more amicable to it if they offered a tax rebate? Because I know that like my mom paid off some student loans for my brother. I know other people paid off their student loans and did the right thing. And for me, I'm like, I'm with you. I would love mine to be forgiven, but I also think about the people who like had the money and paid it. Would you be up to it if they actually would give a tax break to the people who had already paid off their loans?
Right, I wouldn't be opposed to a lot of different ideas, that including that one. One thing I would say is that there would have to be changes going forward with how the government actually gives money out. I mean, that's how we've kind of ended up in this situation to begin with, is that there's free money, and all these colleges say, well, if there's free money, we're just going to increase the amount that we charge for students to come here.
Thank you.
The government
Yeah.
created this problem, and so if they're going to make that choice, or they're going to say any kind of student loan forgiveness, I think they got to start there first and say, we're not going to give out unlimited amounts of money anymore.
Right. And I mean, I wanted to read this off to you guys because according to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York, federal student loans reached an all-time high nearing $1.6 trillion among more than 40 million Americans. And Brock, why is it that people like Joel Osteen and Tom Brady, to name a few, are able to receive a PPE loan in the millions, but the US government can't set aside $400 million to help 40 million struggling millennials out of predatory debt? Because after all, Tom Brady is employed playing in the Super Bowl next week. What's your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, like most things done by the government, it's terribly inefficient and often misses the mark and doesn't actually accomplish, again, what was intended. Clearly, stimulus was needed. There was no way around that. But we're still seeing like 50% of small businesses that have failed or failing. People are struggling. We're giving out money, but we're not giving it out probably in the right ways. We're not being discerning. We're not actually trying to solve specific problems. It's giving a handout versus a hand up. And I think there's a lot of ways that this could have been done differently. And I hope that with time we make better decisions. And shame on you if you're a billionaire and taking a bunch of PPE loans. I know their attitude is, well, the government's handing out free money, but I know a lot of people that applied for PPE and didn't get any, that needed it, and their business failed. And so it's not like, oh, they're giving out free money. If you don't need it, don't take it. Exercise a little personal responsibility. My companies that I own didn't apply for loans.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, it's crazy. They want to bail out Wall Street, but can't set aside, $400 million. But we got to move on. And Eddie, I'm going to throw this at you because President Joe Biden has been systematically undoing former President Donald Trump's policies on climate change with the swift of a pen. And as a millennial, I think everyone can agree that no one has a problem with enforcing new government rules on oil and gas companies to not dump stuff into the water or into the air. But what is it about rejoining the Paris Climate Agreement that the youth should be aware of?
With that in particular, I mean, you have to look at the fact that other countries, one, it was about giving money to different countries. We were giving money to like India and China, maybe not China, but we were giving it to India and other developing countries. And then certain standards did not apply to China and India, which I believe is the second or third largest CO2 outputter. When we're basically hamstringing ourselves and telling them, well, just go for it, it's fine, and you can poison the waters, you can poison the skies, but we on the other hand are going to completely cripple our middle class with these regulations. That's what everyone should know. And anyone and you were talking in particular about millennial, or anyone who's younger coming up into the workforce, understand that the life you thought you might have, the life that your parents had, that's not going to be the same for you. And then just one real quick point I just wanted to say about what Brock said is, yes, with the money that's going out, the stimulus money, the issue there is that we can't spend it on the things that we would like to spend it on, or that would really stimulate the economy, which is going to restaurants, going to the movies, going to concerts, taking a trip somewhere. You're not allowed to do those things. So what do people like me do? We put it to debt, or we save it. That doesn't stimulate anything when you have the economy manually shut down.
Thank you. I'm a server and I want to work. I'm crying every month because I can't pay my bills. I'm dealing with EDD. I mean, it's a frustration. I'm with you.
No, sure. Yeah, it's a real thing. And I know Marissa pointed this out to me, but I mean, yesterday on Twitter,
real quickly, I'm running out of time, but Eddie, you're like my fave tweeter. I don't really agree with everything you put up there, but the way you tweet, I'm like, fire. And I saw yesterday that your gas company is already trying to take the initiative to fight climate change by shutting off your gas in the middle
at
of
your expense.
Yeah.
You know, right? So
have you invested in a pair of Bernie mittens? Because I think
that's the real question.
I should think about that. Yes.
But Brock, let me throw this at you because I can turn down the heat, I can turn off the lights, I can stream naked in the dark and eat a vegan burger, but it won't make a difference to fight global warming. So from a report from 2019 by John Kerry, the new appointed US climate envoy, wrote in the Washington Post article stating that China and India aren't doing enough to fight climate change, partly by design. So, Brock, where are you at with global warming?
I'm deeply concerned by the potential problems of environmental or climate change. And I believe in the same way that if you have your home, you know, pick up after yourself, keep your house in good order. Whether the data that we have is accurate or not, it's still good to be responsible, be a good steward, leave things better than you found it. And so I constantly encourage people to do the same, because if that information proves to be right, we're going to be very happy that we did something about it. And if it proves to be wrong, well, at least we live in a cleaner world. And so I'm an advocate for it in general, but by teaching responsibility. Again, I go to places like Burning Man. We have these models of leave no trace. You know, don't leave a mess. Don't unnecessarily create trash. Try to recycle things. You know, do your best. Leave the world better than you found it.
Yeah, I would have never thought that Brock Pierce would have quoted Burning Man and climate change all in the same conversation. I love it. But all right, let's move on, because I know Joe Biden has signed a new executive actions on equity, and he addresses 3 items that were clear to me: end of private prisons, expanding access to ballot boxes, which I really don't know what that has to do with equity, and rescinding Trump's ban on diversity and sensitivity training. So, Eddie, can someone please explain to me, as someone who wrote a book called Privileged Victims, and I'll paraphrase what Tucker Carlson said this week, what precisely is privilege, and can it be measured? And if so, is there a formula?
Right. No, just understand that it's exclusive to the left and exclusive to liberals who are the ones who are able to say, well, you have privilege, and I get this all the time on social media, where I say something that liberals don't like, and they say, well, that's coming from your white privilege in particular. And I, by the way, am not white. Right. They just decide it. They determine whether you do, and if they don't agree with what you said, well, it's because you've got privilege, and you need to check it, by the way, which checking means shutting up. You don't get to have a say in this debate. But I think, no, it's a really scary thing when they talk about this equity stuff. All it means, and they'll deny it, but you follow it to its logical end. It's race quotas, reparations, any of those numbers are things that everyone's completely opposed to, but it sounds nice because it's equity.
Right. And Brock, let me throw this at you, because is racial equity just a fancier word of saying reparations? Because I don't see where the money is being reallocated.
I mean, it could be. I think it depends on who's utilizing the word. Sometimes people are saying things not even knowing what they're saying. I imagine that for a number of people, yes, it is. It's a path to reparation discussions. Clearly, but this is a real issue. We do have this country is divided racially, economically, politically, and again, the onus is on us to be our best selves, and to try and treat people with respect, treat people the way that you wish to be treated. You know, that good old fashioned golden rule.
Right. I'm with you. And, and since we got a little bit of time, let's try to make this really quick, because I did want to bring this up with you. There was a group of Republican senators who plan to reintroduce a proposed amendment to the U.S. Constitution to place term limits on members of both the House and the Senate. And the proposal would limit senators to 2 6-year terms and representatives to 3 2-year terms. And back in October, Brock, you stated that there's a phoenix rising from the ashes and America is going to soar into leadership roles. And are you in favor of term limits? Because some of these career politicians are becoming a little bit ashy, in my opinion. What's your thoughts?
Well, in a perfect world, they're not necessary. If you had great elected officials, you want them to serve as long as they're willing. But we don't have that. And so in
Unfortunately, Brock, you were cutting out just a little bit right there, but I'll throw this over at Eddie. You heard the question. You know, basically, we got career politicians such as Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell never seeming to go away. I mean, when I see Nancy with the picture right next to JFK, I feel like there's a problem. Like, how do we get young millennials to step up into public office? Are you for term limits?
Right, and I think I share the same opinion as Brock. Actually, I think in an ideal world you wouldn't have to have them. We're set up in a system where it's if you don't like if you don't like the system the way it is, vote somebody else in. The problem is every district, the constituents tend to like their own congressperson. The states like their own senators, so it does create a bit of a problem. However, I would note that what you often see is when they're in office and they plan on running for re-election is that they're saying the things that their constituents want, but then suddenly when they decide they're going to retire, they're doing something completely different.
Right.
I think we would actually see better people running if they knew that they were term limited.
That's so true. And while we got just a tiny minute, I did want to throw these two questions, just as quick as possible. Brock, I wanted to throw this at you. Are you going to run again for president of the United States in 2024? Yes or no?
It's impossible to say this early, but it's very possible.
Oh, stop it. Are you going to run? I know you're thinking about it.
I'm absolutely thinking about it. That's what the last run was for. It was the trial run to learn the mechanics so that I'd be ready for the real run when the time comes.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's the answer I wanted to see. Thank you for being honest. And Eddie, are you writing a sequel on your book, Grow Up and Vote for Trump? Because did you rip out like pages and forgot to glue them in? I mean, is there something that we could be expecting?
Well, first, I hope Brock does run again because I missed his election party last year. I actually lost my wallet in an Uber, so I couldn't make it. But two, Grow Up and Vote for Trump was actually was somewhat of a sequel to the previous book, Privileged Victims. But I think we've got something coming during at least the Biden administration that will be very good, and we'll have some of the same themes. So
that's what I love to hear. You guys are amazing. Thank you again for returning to the Chris Collins Show, Millennial Talk Show. Check out Brock Pierce and Eddie Scarry. They're all over the place. You know the drill. And thanks to you again, brothers. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Ciao, Bella.
See you around.